The night had started quietly, the kind of calm that settles over a city just before trouble decides to breathe. Sarah rode alone, her helmet tucked under her arm, leather jacket zipped halfway as she crossed the dim parking lot behind the diner. She was late, tired, and thinking only about getting home. A van rolled in too fast and stopped too close. Doors slid open. Voices laughed, sharp and careless. Sarah sensed danger before she saw it, her instincts tightening like a fist. She turned, but hands grabbed her arm, shoving her hard against the cold metal of the van, words spilling out that burned worse than the grip. She fought back, but there were too many of them. One shoved her to the ground, another kicked her helmet away. Pain flared across her ribs and fear followed, heavy and suffocating. What hurt most wasn't the blows, but the way they laughed, like she was nothing more than a game. Headlights cut through the darkness. A car slowed. Someone shouted. The thugs scattered, melting back into the night, leaving Sarah shaking on the asphalt. A stranger knelt beside her, asking if she could stand, if she was hurt. She nodded, biting back tears, refusing to break. At home, she cleaned the blood from her lip and stared at her reflection. She didn't want sympathy, and she didn't want revenge. But when her husband Mark saw the bruises, the silence that filled the room was heavier than any scream. Mark wasn't just a biker. He was the vice president of the Iron Ravens. He listened without interrupting, jaw clenched, eyes dark. When she finished, he wrapped her in his arms, careful of her ribs. "You're safe," he said softly. But she could feel the storm building under his calm voice, restrained only by discipline and respect for her wishes. By morning, the club knew. Not because Mark shouted, but because bikers notice everything. A bruise here, a limp there, silence where laughter should be. The Ravens gathered at the clubhouse, engines quiet, faces grim. No one spoke about revenge. They spoke about protection, about lines that should never be crossed. The club didn't rush out swinging. They did something smarter. They found the van, abandoned near a chop shop. They found witnesses who suddenly felt safe enough to talk. They found names, habits, and hangouts. Each detail clicked into place like pieces of a dark puzzle. Mark met with the club president, an older man with silver in his beard and scars on his hands. "This isn't about pride," the president said. "It's about making sure this never happens again." The Ravens agreed. Violence would only invite chaos. Accountability would bring order. The thugs were small-time predators, bold only in numbers and darkness. The Ravens approached them in daylight, not as monsters, but as inevitability. They stood outside the garage where the men worked, blocking exits, engines idling, presence overwhelming without a single threat spoken. One by one, the men were brought out, confronted with evidence, witnesses, and consequences they hadn't imagined. Police reports were filed, not anonymously, but confidently. Security footage was handed over. Charges stacked up quickly when fear changed sides. The club didn't interfere with the law. They made sure the law had everything it needed. When one thug tried to run, he found every road watched, every door closed. When another tried to intimidate a witness, the Ravens were already there, silent, unmoving, recording everything. Sarah watched from a distance as justice unfolded, not with cheers, but with resolve. She attended court, standing tall despite the whispers. Mark sat beside her, not as a biker, but as a husband. The Ravens filled the benches behind them, not to threaten, but to support. The verdicts came quickly. Assault charges, prison time, restitution. The men who once laughed now stared at the floor. The judge spoke about accountability, about communities protecting their own. Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. A knot she hadn't realized was there. Life didn't snap back to normal. Healing took time. Some nights, the parking lot still haunted her dreams. But she wasn't alone. The club installed better lighting near the diner. Escorts offered rides home to anyone who felt unsafe. The Ravens became guardians instead of shadows. Months later, Sarah rode again, wind rushing past her helmet, fear replaced by strength. She stopped at the diner, parked confidently, and smiled at the waitress who remembered her. The city felt different now, not because danger was gone, but because courage had shown up. The story spread, twisted by rumor and exaggeration, but the truth remained simple. A woman was hurt. A community responded with restraint and resolve. No chaos, no bragging. Just justice done right. And in the quiet moments, when engines rested and the night stayed calm, the Iron Ravens remembered why they rode together in the first place. Not for power, not for fear, but for loyalty, protection, and the unspoken promise that no one stands alone.